Hello everybody, welcome to another RIBALD health class. This week we're putting the men in mental health. I enjoyed that way too much this week. And I actually had a really hard time filming this video. I did it probably about 20 times and I got very emotional each time. I look at statistics all the time with my schooling that I'm in, but these statistics specifically hit way too close to home for me. So this was actually quite difficult. And I wrote a paper about this specifically on the LGBTQI plus community last semester, and the suicide rate in males just in that alone is astounding, and especially with Canadian males. So 4 in every 5 suicides in Canada are male, and that's not specific to one community and it's not specific to one age group. It's just 4 in every 5 are male, and I find that so sad. And I find it actually quite ironic that the psychological handbook, or like what everybody kind of assesses psychologically with, and majority of the medical field still is based off of male symptoms. So the fact that they're not really having access or understanding with men in mental health, find it wildly ironic, and we need to change that. And I think one of the main contributors to this is obviously the societal discourse of what we think the male should look like, which I can maybe understand back 100 years ago where, it was simply you had to take care of your family, you were supposed to be this man, you were supposed to be strong for everybody, and you literally didn't have enough time to even think about it or talk about it because you're trying to survive. But now we have more of a need for that, and sweeping stuff under the rug, not having any kind of emotional insight can be very dangerous to, yourself or to others. And society sees this typical alpha male type, which is actually the beta to be this, tin man who, makes fun of others for being feminine or doing all that, is actually a beta type. And we shouldn't put that on a pedestal. There's one guy on TikTok actually that did an amazing thing on what the alpha male should be, and it was, they need to be able to know how to communicate. They need to be able to, grasp their emotions and be able to understand them and be able to communicate that with others. They need to create safe spaces for others. Like, that's the typical, right? So if somebody's saying they're an alpha male, they're not. But there's just not enough soft spaces for men. And I think they feel they're being a burden because, there's that typical, you have to be a man, you have to be the one that supports, you have to be the stoic one in the family. And I don't think that applies, especially with how much gender roles have changed throughout the years. And you can still be the man in the family, and you can still be, that figurehead, but you can also be emotionally available and feminine, and every single person has a masculine and a feminine side. It's not just men, it's not just females, it's not like anybody else. Everybody has that. Some people are a little more feminine presenting than others, or a little more masculine presenting. It really doesn't matter in gender. Gender is also a social construct, and it's bullshit. That's one thing I really like about more like Indigenous or those types of beliefs, because they believe in the two-spirit people, which can be either or, and that's what we consider in like Western culture as non-binary. So it's not non-binary is not a new concept, it's just newly categorized, because as humans we need to categorize everything in order to know how we're supposed to feel about something. Just feel what you want. I will always advocate for these safe spaces and for boundaries in people too, which is definitely important when it comes to this. But I think one of the major things that we need to fight is this toxic conversation around what men should be. And it starts at a really young age. Like, you hear somebody telling their son, oh, you can't play with Barbies because Barbies are a girl's toy. You can't have long hair because long hair is for girls. And that's kind of where it starts. And that's where the inner monologue happens. If you don't if you don't put any energy into telling your kid that, be like, oh, that's wrong, they probably won't think anything of it, and they're not going to have this anxiety inside them growing up. You're like, oh, well, I want to do that though. Why is that a bad thing? And that shouldn't be what we're telling kids, right? Like they're not thinking about it. They just want to play with the doll that's in front of them. And also, if they're going to be a part of the LGBTQ community, they're going to be a part of it regardless if you let them play with dolls or not. So get over that. It's not just a phase. So that's kind of where it starts. And even I know I've seen it lots of times. I mean, I used to work in the oil field. I lived in rural Alberta and I grew up there, and I was always around like hockey guys or oil field guys or country guys. And it was sad to see that even their friends weren't a safe space for them, because they would say like, oh, I'm not feeling very, I'm not very good. Like I'm kind of emotional. And they'd be like, oh, you're being a pussy. And like, that's where we need to stop that conversation, right? And yes, you may not be a super confrontational person, but even saying, hey, you know what? If they want to live their life that way, let them live their life that way. That doesn't affect us any. Like it can be as simple as that. Like you don't need to start an all-out brawl, but that's where most of this needs to stop. And create the safe space, obviously, but people pay attention to when you're talking. Like it's great to put, hashtag Bell Let's Talk and put all that on your Facebook page, your Instagram page. But if you're saying things that are contradictory to that, or you're allowing contradictory behavior to that, there's no point in you putting that up there. That's all great, but you actually need to create those spaces. And stopping that self-talk or stopping that kind of monologue, like within your friends group or your family or whatever. Because you know what? At the end of the day, if those people want to be that closed-minded, they don't have to be your friends. The importance and the safety of these people that really need help are where we should be putting our energy. Because it is crazy to see the rate of suicide that is happening right now, especially with like the coronavirus, because these, they're supposed to be the man. They're supposed to be protecting their family and taking care of their family, and they're not. And you know what? It is okay for men to stay at home with their kids if their wife is working. It is okay for those kind of things to happen. I would love to have 50-50 and a house husband sometimes, because that's just who I am as a person. And that's okay. And people should not be shamed for that too. And this like toxic monologue is not creating safe spaces for people, and it makes people silence themselves. And that's a huge problem, because anything mental illness or depression or anxiety related, once they become silenced, they internalize it, and then it starts to either physically manifest or there's huge outbursts and really bad things can happen. But the most important thing is the suicide aspect of it. And it is so sad to think that people get to that point. And a lot of times the people who commit suicide aren't the ones that are saying they're going to. So in order to create these spaces, have these conversations, and like see the signs in people, because a lot of the time it leads to, addictive type behaviors, because trauma is what causes addiction. And, it could be as simple as they can't just have one beer a night. They have to have the whole case, or little things like that we're just like, oh, that's just them. When in reality, it's kind of a cry for help. And most men that experience these kind of depressive symptoms too, or anxiety, things like that, they don't even know that they're experiencing it. They just think, oh, I have a stomach ache, or I have for a week, or, my heart really hurts, or I'm feeling really tired. So having this conversation about those things can maybe trigger, oh, maybe I should ask for help. And this is going to be quite a process, because it's trying to break down the walls for them too. It's new for them to experience all these emotions and navigate all of these different things. So if you get a little bit, if it's a little rough edged going into it, just give them patience. Especially as females, we're so used to being with our emotions and dealing with it all the time, but men aren't necessarily used to that. So Again, give them some time, give them some space to learn and to grow, and just tell them that they're supported, that they're loved, and that we actually care about them. Because again, think of 5 guys you know, and then think of 4 of those guys just not being there. And that's the statistic. And we need to stop that, because that is not good. That is the true pandemic that is happening, really. And again, just tell the guys in your life that they matter. If they ever need to talk, that, you know, zero judgment, or that you'll help them find a counselor or something like that. I actually heard a really good ad in where I'm from saying that they have therapists specific to farmers, and because they're experiencing totally different things. And I think that's a huge step forward, and I'm really looking forward to that kind of a movement happening. So again, tell the men in your life that you love them. They need help, always come to you, or you can guide them elsewhere. So hope everybody has a really good weekend. Stay warm, and I will see you next week.